Scotland's position in the United Kingdom has to be made clear. Obviously, we might be having a referendum after Brexit. My position on Scottish independence I would vote to stay as part of Britain, because I think if we left Britain, Scotland would be worse off. But I would be willing to take a neutral position in regard to Scottish independence, because the Conservative government in Scotland doesn't look after the interests of Scotland. So if Scotland did become independent, we could vote in our own right wing government. I don't say we would call it a Conservative government. We could have a right wing nationalist populist government running Scotland after the SNP have been running Scotland for 14 years. Beyond that point, we could have a different direction, but we would have a Scotland that would be based on a market economy. We'd have a national health service and public services. Whether the services would stay in the public sector or be sold off remains to be seen. That's up to the people of Scotland to vote in a general election. We would also want to have a Scotland where income tax would be the same as the United States or the Republic of Ireland, because raising taxes by so much, like they did in the 1970s under previous Tory governments in the 1950s, would be wrong, and that Margaret Thatcher had fundamentally changed that when she cut the top rate of income tax from 83 pence in the pound to 40 pence in the pound, and she reduced inflation from 22% to 4% by 1983, but interest rates were always above 12 to 15% between 1979 up to 1988. Then she reduced them to 7.5% when the British pound was shadowing the Deutschmark. Then they had to put them back up to 15% in 1990. Then Britain joined the ERM. That was the precursor to the euro, and I'll leave it at that. My own view in regard to Italy is that Matteo Salvini's done an excellent job, and he's in a strong position within the Italian government. Now, Italy has deported 500,000 migrants over a period of 5 years. They've said that in their election platform when the Italians voted in the right-wing nationalist populists. And Europe has to adopt the same position as Italy, and Germany has to move in the same right-wing direction as Italy, and other central states like Hungary and Poland would have to have a homogenous society which would favour the majority, which is the white population. And I think this is the way things are going. But however, saying that, I will be satisfied to see Scotland remain part of Britain until after Brexit, which I think has got a good chance of happening, assuming Boris Johnson becomes the British Prime Minister. The stark relief between the Tories and the SNP is that the Tories support the Union and the SNP support Scottish independence, and the SNP is split between left wing, and then you have the Tartan Tories, which is right wing back to the 1950s and back in the 1934 when the SNP was set up by Hugh McDermott. Hugh McDermott supported Benito Mussolini's form of government in the 30s because he was upset with a high level of inequality and deprivation in Scotland when we were hammered with the 1929 stock market crash. One can go into the economic details of that, but we didn't really recover from that until 1940, when up till 1945, then 1952, that's when we fully recovered and we had full employment. Now, full employment is a definition where you have 100% of the workforce in full mealtime employment. In Scotland, we have about 75% working in full-time employment, which is 2.6 million Scottish people. Now, with that, you've got 200,000 EU nationals that come from France, Italy, Spain, and Germany. and they would have to be given citizenship in Scotland if Scotland becomes independent. It would either want to stay part of the EU if that's the majority will, then that fair enough. However, the EU has to change, but I can only see it changing if Germany and France fundamentally wanted to change it. Italy can change it within it as well. Italy's making its own deals with China, and no doubt Italy will stay in the EU with the current Italian right wing government in power, and they'll make deals with Austria, Germany, Hungary, Poland, and to a lesser extent France. I think Macron is on the way out because he's more like governing France like Marie Antoinette, and the French Yellow Vests are having a revolt against his government because he's cut everything back. He has cut taxes for the rich, but every country in Europe has lower taxes for not just the wealthy and the middle classes, but also for multinationals. They can take their businesses anywhere in this economic climate, which is based on free enterprise and capitalism. Scotland's economy is basically supposed to be a mixed economy, but the definition of a mixed economy is between private enterprise and state enterprise. We don't have any state enterprises in Scotland because they've all been sold off by Margaret Thatcher. She did that within the first 12 years of her government. But having said that, she wanted to move the direction of Britain towards capitalism. She did that, but she always had a problem with the EU, and she predicted in 1990 that it would turn into a EU superstate. And I think there's pushback against that in regard to the mass migration coming from the Middle East and Africa, and the EU in Brussels wants to let mass migration into Europe, but there's pushback against that, and that needs to be stopped. Obviously, Germany has to change fundamentally, but that won't happen to, like Scotland in 2 years' time when Germany has a federal election along with Scotland. It'll be interesting to see who wins that. I think I've covered everything in regard to Europe. However, if Scotland did become independent, its government would either have to be right wing or left wing. I think the SNP will probably lose 10 to 20 seats, would be pushing it. The Tories have a problem with the Brexit party because they'll be wanting a no deal hard Brexit, and they won't be want to give the EU £40 billion. But if Britain cuts its ties fundamentally with Europe, it could hit our economy. But I think Britain would survive it. I don't think we would be any worse off than we are at the moment. There would also be a hit for France. The French wouldn't be Fishermen wouldn't be allowed into EU. No, into EU. I made a mistake there. The French wouldn't be allowed into British fishing grounds, which Britain would have its 200-mile limit back. But we would also have tariffs on goods coming into Britain, like food and everything else. German cars and British would put 10% tariffs in that, and that's something Germany would want to avoid. I would have just liked a free trade agreement with Europe, and we would leave and it'd be a clean break. But the EU's made it as difficult as possible for Britain to leave it. Whether we do leave it, I'll be very surprised. I support President Trump for 2020. I think he's got a good chance of winning that. And the Democrats, I don't know if they'll still retain control of Congress. They didn't retain control of the Senate, but there's a separation of powers between Congress and the Senate. But the 2020 election, I think Donald Trump could win that with over 300 or 400 electoral college votes. But the main objective is to maintain a world where we have a peaceful relationship between ourselves and obviously Russia and communist China. We need a trade agreement with them between the United States and China, and the Chinese position would be their Belt and Road position. Italy's made a deal with them in regard to that, and I think it'll work all right. Thank you. That's me finished now. Goodbye.